Markwick is a conjoint professor of modern European history at the University of Newcastle in Australia. Roger, thank you for your time. You'll have seen earlier this week the director of the CIA, William Burns, was speaking to a congressional hearing, and he said that as far as he's concerned, Vladimir Putin has been stewing in a combustible combination of grievance and ambition for years, and that this attack on Ukraine is a matter of deep personal conviction for Mr. Putin. But the question to you is, how much does the military action in Ukraine threaten Putin's own position?
Well, I think in the first instance, Putin thought that it may well strengthen his position, and certainly I think he believes that, or I think believes so far, that he would be able to conduct a more or less lightning strike on the Ukraine, that he was dealing with a Nazi regime, that Ukrainian people, as basically fraternal peoples with the Russians, would in some way or other welcome his forces. But to conduct a war that really he doesn't seem to have any real manifest popular support, really is quite a risky undertaking. When Putin undertook in 2014, basically annexed the Crimea on the grounds that it was essentially a Russian ethnic region and historically belonged to Russia, in fact, that marked a real high point in Putin's popularity amongst the Russian citizenry. I can say that. In fact, I was actually in Russia at the time. But this time around, there seems to be more doubt on the ground. And certainly, from my reading so far, and also with some people I'm in contact with in Russia, especially amongst the younger people, younger educated people, there is a significant amount of, there are real reservations about the war that's being undertaken. And I think that the fact that Putin has put in place laws, most recently a law that in fact can send you, that can sign a protester to 15 years imprisonment simply for demonstrating, even in the most mild form, even as an individual, against this war, signifies, in fact, this lack of support, I think, and uncertainty, actually, about public opinion and his ability to really prosecute this war without, in fact, creating civil unrest.
Roger, just using that word war in Russia could now land you in prison. What about the motivation here? Because a lot of people are saying that what Vladimir Putin is saying publicly about NATO expansion is actually a sideshow. NATO hasn't expanded over the past few years. Okay, it did some time ago, but he's known that recently there hasn't been any sort of mission creep as far as the Western military alliance goes, and that actually his real motivation is possibly this deep personal conviction that William Burns of the CIA is talking about, that what he wants is to unite Russian speakers in territories around Russia. Is that more likely?
Well, let me say, first of all, I don't discount, actually, Russian concerns about NATO. That, as you said, has been going, the expansion of NATO has been going on for a long time. But as far as I can see, really, the concerns about NATO, the security concerns about Russia really erupted in 2014 when Yanukovych, who was the then president of Ukraine, was ousted in the so-called Maidan revolution. And Yanukovych was certainly leaning towards Russia. And the fact that a pro-Russian president in Ukraine was effectively removed with, as I've said previously, with the active and/or silent acquiescence of the Western powers, I think that raised the stakes for Putin himself. But already underway, I think it's pretty clear already before that, say, in his second term starts in 2012, Putin was increasingly leaning towards the sense of the loss of Russia's standing in the world. I'm not one of those who thinks that, for example, Putin is intent on re-establishing the Soviet Union. Increasingly, and especially since 2014, he's looked through the prism of Russian civilization, the Russian Orthodox Church, the Russian people, and basically seeking to draw those peoples in under the umbrella, if not the direct rule of Russia itself.
Yeah.
And for that reason, for example, I've already mentioned Crimea back in 2014, but of course, we've had this, or they've had this in the Donbass, this ongoing civil war, virtually, the Russian-speaking Lugansk, and Donetsk regions, really in a military standoff with Kyiv in the west, and Putin actively supporting that movement, although fairly surreptitiously at times. I should say, though, in that regard, you have to be a little bit careful about overdrawing Putin's determination, initially at least, to undertake the sort of action that he's undertaken now. That is a full-scale intervention on the alleged grounds that what was being committed in the Donbass was a genocide. That, of course, doesn't hold any water. But that has become a pretext for him, I think, to at least in the first instance, to re-establish that connection, increasingly re-establish, and in this case, by outright military force, twofold, to increase, to build, to draw the Russian community, so to speak, Russian speakers back into the Russian fold, and at the same time to, in this case, subordinate the Ukrainian state effectively to the will of Moscow on the grounds that, in basically, Ukraine doesn't have any meaningful identity or state structures actually now outside of Russia itself.
Roger, thank you very much indeed for your time. Roger Markwick from the University of Newcastle in Australia.